Okay, so the first thing that we're going to be doing is connecting to our database and actually echoing out these results down the page. So I've created two files. One is called index.php. This is the page that you saw earlier in the browser, and db.inc.php is simply going to connect to our database. So I'm going to go ahead and start connecting to the database. You should, like I said in the first part of the tutorial, be familiar with the concept of connecting to a database, because this is really important. When you start to deal with things like pagination, you really need to know the fundamentals. So I'm connected to my database. The server is localhost, and the root is for the password, and there's the username, sorry, and there's no password available. I don't have a password set for this root account. So we're connecting to our MySQL server, and we're selecting our database. And if we go ahead and open up our browser, you can see that the database name is Pagination. So I'm just going to type that in there. Okay, so I've saved this file, and the first thing that we're going to do in index.php is actually include this at the top of our document, because we're going to need to connect to the database before we actually do anything. So I've included db.inc.php. We can come over to our browser and refresh just to test that that's worked. We haven't received an error, so we've successfully connected. Okay, so the first thing we want to do now is actually set the page limit in a variable, and we can use this down the page and reference this several times. So I'm going to create a variable called per page, and for now I'm going to make this equal to 6. So this is an integer value, and we're going to use this to work out what records we actually need to show. So that's the first thing that we've done. We've created this variable. Now what we need to do is actually get a list of the entire results from the database, and then we're going to work around these to actually create the pagination. So I am going to create a variable called query, and this is going to be equal to MySQL query, and inside the query is going to be select name from, and this is our table name here, which is names, I believe. Let's just double check. Yeah, names. So I'm selecting this field from this table, and there's absolutely no condition on this. We're just returning all the names. Later on we're going to be adding the limit keyword, which is going to limit the amount of results that we show depending on a specified page. So now let's go ahead and create a while loop, and what this is going to do is it's going to loop through each record in the database. So we're going to say query row is equal to MySQL fetch associative array. This stands for associative, and we're putting the results from our query into an array, and the array is query row. So it's basic MySQL syntax in PHP to actually echo out all of our rows. So now what I can do is I can echo, and I want to create some paragraph tags, and then I'm going to actually end this one a comma, and then we're going to put the name here, and then we're going to again comma, and then end the paragraph. So really what we're doing is we're just sort of escaping out of the string, if you like, and then adding the paragraph on the end. This will make a lot more sense when I preview in the browser. So we're going to reference query row, which is our array, and because we're using an array, we're using square brackets, and inside here we're just simply going to type the field name that we want to display, which is name. So the field name in our database here is what we want to display. If we wanted to display name ID, we would put name ID in here. So this is all we really need to actually grab the results from our database. So let's go ahead and preview this in our browser. I'm going to press F5, and you can see that I've given a list of all the records in our database, and you can see that I've used my paragraph tags, which have actually gone in the start and the end of each record. Okay, so this is all well and good, but we actually need to crack on with the pagination now. So there's a few more variables that we need to define up here. Now the way this is going to work is we're going to be appending onto the end of this URL a page equals something. So for example, if it was page equals 1, we would show the first 6 results. If it was page 2, we would show the next 6 results, and so on, depending on the amount of data that's in your database. So what we need to do is we need to count the amount of pages, count the amount of records in our database. So I'm going to create a variable called pages query, and that's going to equal MySQL query. So we're creating a new query, but this time we're selecting count. We're using the count function, and we're counting name ID. We're just using this field to count, and then we're going to say from names. So select count from names. What this query is going to do is it's going to return the number of records that we have in our database. So for example, well, in my example it would be 20. So now what we need to do is fetch this result. So I'm going to create a new variable called pages, and this is going to be equal to MySQL result, and then this is going to take two parameters. The first is the query we'll want to grab the result from, that's pages query, and the second parameter, separated with a comma, is 0. This just means the first row returned. You can see that what's going to happen if we paste this query into PHP-MyAdmin is we're going to be returned one result, and that's going to be the count, which is 20. So you can see that that's there. So this is going to return 20. We've grabbed the result, and we can just echo that out just to test. So let's go over to our browser, press F5 to refresh, and you can see that we've got 20 up here. So we're obviously not going to be displaying the amount of pages. That's irrelevant to the user. The amount of records, sorry. The user might not want to know how many records there are. Obviously, this is up to you. But what we need to actually do is divide this value by the amount of pages we are separating by. So if we have 20 records, we're going to end up with, and we divide it by 6, we're going to end up with 3.3 recurring. Now obviously 3.3 recurring pages, we can't do that. The user can't click on a page 3.3, for example. So let's echo that out just to demonstrate that. You can see that we've got 3.3 recurring here. But we actually are going to have 4 pages. The reason being is that we have 6, 12, 18, and then we have 2 records left over, and these 2 records left over need to be on the 4th page. So we need to round this number up to the next whole integer in order to get a real representation of a whole number of pages. So we use the ceil function for that. It's opposite to the floor function. The floor function in PHP rounds down, and the ceil function rounds up. So you've got floor and ceiling. That's a good way to remember it, and that's obviously why the functions were named that way. So now when we refresh, you can see that we've got the value 4. So we've now established with the record count that we have how many pages we actually need to display and split by. Okay, so this is all well and good. We've echoed out our pages. I'm just going to delete that now because we don't need to really show that to the user. We now need to actually take in the page that the user wants to view. So for example, page equals 1, or page equals 2, page equals 3, or page equals 4. Page equals 5 in this case doesn't exist because we don't move on to 5 pages. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take away this get variable there, and we're going to create an if statement to actually check if this exists in the URL. Okay. Well, we're going to be using a condensed if statement, if you like. So I'm going to be setting a variable page, and that's going to be the current page that the user is viewing. Now we need to perform a check in here and a condition. This needs to be met, and if the condition is met, we're going to create a new variable and assign it to page. So this variable is going to be the get value of the page that we've specified in the URL. So if you're not too sure what's going on at the moment, don't worry. The condition is if we are not actually using an if statement, but is set $_get page. Now this is really important, checking if it's actually set, because if it's not set, we're going to get an undefined variable error. So if the page is set, if we've actually typed page equals 1 or page equals 2 or something, the user's not actually going to type page equals themselves. We're going to have links that we're going to deal with this a bit later. But if this is set, we have a parse error because we haven't completed this line, but if it is set, we're going to cast a specific value to an int, and that is $_get page. Now the reason we cast it to an int is for security, because we're going to be adding this page here to another variable and calculating the start value of where we want to start in our row. We need to ensure that we cast to an int so we can't, inject things into the URL. So otherwise 1, and the reason we have this otherwise 1 is because if the user was to just land on index.php, what this is automatically going to do is, if they haven't specified a page, i.e. they might not have clicked on page 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to automatically assume page 1 because the user hasn't specified anything. So if we have set the page, we are assigning the value of the page that's been specified to page, otherwise we're assigning the value 1. So that's all well and good. What we now need to do is calculate where we're going to start from in our row, in our record, sorry. So I'm going to create a new variable called start, and that is going to be equal to page -1, I'll explain what this -1 is for in a moment, times per page. So the start is where we are starting from in our record set here. Let's go ahead and browse our data.